Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to SuperCoach Edge and, of course, another edition of Damo's Team Talk. This time coming out of round 21. And let's just get straight to it, shall we? Let's sort of encapsulate the week that was by reading out what was an interesting round score. And it was to the tune of 2,736. So again, another very, very big high-scoring round. Only off the back of, a week or two ago. They're all kind of blending into one at this stage of the season. But, we've had a couple of big weeks now. And thankfully this time around, I actually went up in rank. 7,899th overall now in the overall ranks. And went up to the tune of 356 spots. So green arrow, which is the main thing. But again, with that big score, you expect to go up the ranks a bit more. But it just goes to show that this time of year, it is awfully close. A lot of teams, whilst I don't think by and large aren't exactly, identical, but I think the building blocks, the keys of a majority of people's teams are the same. Talking, Bond, Gawn, potentially Whitfield, those type of players that I think, dictate, similar-ish type scores, bar a few pods here and there. And it's really important, I think, just to touch on the importance of pods this time of year, because that's what kind of differentiates your team from the rest. Because, as I said, there are, elements of people's teams that are the same, and that's kind of where you are set apart. But let's get into our team line by line. And at the moment, actually, we are still ranked in the top 4%. So we are hoping to achieve the top 5,000 rank within that space there. So we'll wait and see how we can do it. But team value overall, we are now a touch under 14 million, which is a really nice rise, 30,980,500. So good to see there. And in terms of line by line, let's go through defense. So Jack Sinclair, as I sort of forecast the previous round review, team talk, whatever you want to call it, and also in the SuperCoach Edge episode proper, that Sinclair more than likely had his, old rollback without Wanganeen Miller cramping his style, and he busted out a 128, so a very, very nice score, and now is consecutive 4 tons in a row with his past 3 rounds reading with a 120, 132, and a 128, and now faces Richmond as well, so could really extend that into another week. And all important as well for those of you who are progressing through to the second week of finals, if you have not been fortunate to go through to a prelim. So that is very, very important in head-to-head matchups there. Now, Jordan Clark, a 122, a nice return to form here. Really watched the game because obviously facing Carlton My Mob, and he looked really good around the ground, pushed up the ground as well, and a 122, a nice little taster there from him, because he has been scoring quite well, bar a couple of hiccups over the past 2 months. So good to see there from Jordan Clark. Thank you, kind sir. Harry Sheasel as well, speaking of return to form, a 131 from him, which I think is his biggest score dating back to round 13 when he faced West Coast, when he busted out a 137. So he's tonned up numerous times across the journey since then, but hasn't reached these heights like he did against the Saints with the 131. So good to see there. Lockie Whitfield, 126. And again, a really nice return to form. His highest score since round 14 against Brisbane when he scored a 140. So a welcome return to the 120 mark, especially in the first week of finals. Now, Callum Mills as well. He's putting together a nice body of work. I was critiquing him, criticising him in recent weeks, having picked him up at a bargain price point, because it was seeming as though every second week he was having an off week. But he's reversed that trend from rounds 19 or the past 3 weeks until now. He scored a 115, 125, and a 125. So really good to see there. One at 42.8k and has increased 130.4k overall. Not that it really matters at this stage, because a lot of people are out of trades or down to 1 trade. But if you are in the market for a cheapish defender, I would probably look no further than Callum Mills. Has a really nice role as well. Dane Zorko, 101. I'll be surprised that he's just, tipped over the scales for the ton. He's kind of tripped over the mark. It didn't really go bursting through the blocks, announcing himself with a big score. Like, his past 4 tons that he's had have been 105, 100, 107, and just the 101 on the weekend. So he hasn't scored any more than that since round 14 against the Giants with that 123. So been a really disappointing season from him, and he's probably one of the more regretful purchases that I've had. I swore myself off him and went for him all sort of in opposition to what I was talking about in the preseason, where I wanted to fade these, elder statesmen, we'll call them, because their aggression kind of kicks in at around about his age, and that's happened. So yeah, it's just one of the key learnings, and I was kind of swindled into the fact that, that preseason hurricane that swept across the Queensland coast there, it meant that there was a mix-up in the fixture, and Brisbane no longer had that early season bye. So I was kind of seduced into getting both Zorko and Neil, two guys that I didn't want to get. Neil was in my team, now out of my team, and I would have loved to have done the same with Zorko if I had more trades, but just couldn't afford to do it, unfortunately. But as long as he keeps turning up, that's all we can ask for at the moment. Expectations have been lowered. On the bench, we have Angus Clark from the Dons, scored a 39. Sada El Hawley did not play. In terms of the midfield, Bontempelli. Now, this is where a bulk of the big scoring was done as well. Bont busted out the 151 in the first game for the round, and I was very tempted to put the VC on him, and I kind of didn't because I had my eye set on the 2 ruck combo of Gaundy. So I kind of bypassed that. 151, if I did have the VC on him, it would have been a lock and load. Nicky Dacos, 110. Didn't quite reach the heights of what I thought he would. In sort of recent scores against Brisbane, he's looked pretty good, but on this occasion, just was not able to match it. I did think he was going to get a little bit of attention from Brisbane just because of the fact that he has been in some really, really good form. So no real surprise there for me, but, a bit disappointing nonetheless. Max Holmes, 154. Now, that I think is his biggest score for the season. Let me just have a look at this and correct myself if I am wrong. No, it is his... apologies. It's his second highest score for the season, just behind the 155 that he scored against Essendon back in round 14. Jeez, there's a lot of references here to round 14 from previous players that I've just spoken about in terms of their highest score. But yeah, a 154 off the back of a 130 last week. Really good from Maxi Holmes, and welcome sight during the SuperCoach final. So thank you, kind sir. Zach Butters, now on the other end of the spectrum, this is his by far lowest score of the season, a 45. Copped a little bit of attention, and, I thought it was going to come, but I no way thought that he would reach these depths, as I'll call them, with a score of 45. So very disappointing, but he is owned by 29.7% of the competition, and, that's more than a quarter. So almost a third. So we'll take it, in terms of the fact that, we're not just being affected, it's the third of the competition as well, roughly. But it is still disappointing, especially for those matchups as well, because there were a couple of head-to-head league matchups, finals matchups that I had where my opponent didn't have Butters. Of course, it always happens, doesn't it? The one guy that you just figured everyone would have, no, there are a couple of opponents that didn't have him. And it always tends to happen on the weeks when you need them to score well, they put up a shit score. Let us know if you actually had the same thing happen to you as well. But there is a couple of plays here that did well to, hold the fort in light of Butters just absolutely poo-pooing things there with his 45. Now, Baslinka, 119. He's gone from, heading into this week, question marks over his head. Happened a few times across the course of the season. Is he injured? Will he miss? No, he played and he scored a 119. So thank you, Baslinka. Connor Rosie, speaking of missing, didn't see this coming at all. Now, he missed through illness, apparently, and I actually had Baslinka in my forward line. Now, I should have mentioned from the top, I used my last trade, which we'll get into in a moment in terms of what the thinking was behind this, but Jesse Cameron into my team, 94, and Baslinka was shifted into the midfield. Now, I did this as well with Baslinka because I could have shifted a McRae, a Rankin, Petrarca, Caleb Daniel into my midfield, but I strategically did it with Baslinka because I thought he may be a chance at missing. Now, I was very busy today in terms of the Sunday and wasn't around really to make any changes. And I'm lucky that I actually still have, and I've spoken about it previously, the importance of having depth on the bench and players on the bench that can score and that you can have the emergency on in case of late outs, because it can really, really ruin your SuperCoach finals if you have to cop a zero or, a 22-man score without the flex. So Clay Hall was my emergency, has been scoring quite well in recent weeks in the 80s, only scored a 60, but he filled in for Connor Rosie being a late out through illness. And I logged into my SuperCoach midway through the game and saw Connor Rosie was on zero. I'm like, what's going on? Had a look at Fan Footy and saw that he was not playing, and he was, of course, a late out. So again, just emphasis on not punting all of your depth on the bench, because it can come in handy. And 60 points there, I would have missed out on had I not had Clay Hall with emergency. Now, Hugh Boxall, he actually scored 28 points more than Clay Hall with an 88. I didn't think that was going to happen. Boxall hasn't actually eclipsed this score. His highest score prior to this was a 75 in his first game, but by and large has actually been struggling for game time and, hasn't been scoring too well. But, 88 against North, so it is what it is. We could have had 28 points more, but you can't kick yourself over that. Just happy for the fact that I had coverage for Connor Rosie with Clay Hall. Caleb Sarong, now he is, speaking of regrets, and it might be something that we'll go through in the maybe the round 24 wrap-up, 2025 season wrap-up, about guys that we regret having in our team. Now, this bloke was in our starting squad, and he's been one of the bigger disappointments across the season. I don't know what was going on here. He wasn't really getting any major attention. Just an off game. Scored a 75. Very, very frustrating from Caleb Sarong. And probably another guy that I wish I had extra trades to punt, because I would happily do it. Just a real disappointment. The Chad Warner, a 70. He's kind of fallen away ever since we got him in our team. He's a good for sort of an 80, 90 score. A couple of tons rare here and there, but really has lost that ceiling that he flashed early on. And Zach Johnson was the other one on the bench as well in the midfield, didn't play for the Dons. Now for the Rucks, Maxi Gawn, as I said, put the VC on him. He busted out the 131. Now his game was right before Grundy's game, and we had around about maybe 15, 20 minutes, if that, decision time to work out whether or not we lock in the VC score of 131 from Gorney, with Miso Gorney, or we take the punt with the captaincy on Brodie Grundy. Now, Grundy against Essendon, against Goldstein, I spoke about it in the episode proper. I spoke about it in my team talk, the fact that he was going to absolutely wipe the floor with Goldstein, about the fact that Goldstein can't, he's at that age now where he can't do any impact or minimal impact around the ground, and Grundy was going to wipe the floor with him, and that's just what happened. But I didn't think it was actually going to be 69 points more than what Gawn scored. I actually thought he was going to score anywhere between 130 and 150, and if we missed out on 20 extra points, so be it. But to miss out on 69 extra points, that hurts. That does hurt a bit, especially considering that I was in one major cash league, which was through Better. They invited me, the betting platform, into their 10K league, and I had the chance of doing the captaincy on Grundy. My opponent locked in Gawn's score as well, and I was backing in my team to beat theirs, and fell short. And fell short by, I think it was about 14 points in the end, which hurts, because obviously if I put the captaincy on Grundy, I would have beaten them. But anyway, it is what it is. So happy enough with the 131. As I always say, that like if we knock over the 125, even 120 as a VC score, we'll lock it in. And the old saying, a bird of the hand is worth, more than two in the bush, whatever the hell it is, whatever that saying is. But it virtually means that like having a score, locked and loaded in your hand is worth way more compared to gambling on another player, no matter the matchup. Matching that score, if not breaking it, because of the fact that there is, an element of risk there. Grundy could have been subbed off given the, the matchup. Grundy could have also, been injured, knock on wood, all that sort of stuff, and you would have been kicking yourself. So I think by and large, the the theory of the 125 lock-in score is a good thing, but there's now a couple of times where it's bit us in the arse because, Nicky Dacos smashed down a 170 odd, and likewise as well there by not taking the punt with Grundy. But tis what it is. Harry Boyd, of course, at R3 not playing for St Kilda. For the forwards, now I spoke of the trades that I did. So had one trade remaining, and that trade was Chera, of course, being ruled out. He's got a knee injury. I think he'll probably be put on ice, in all honesty, for Carlton, given their season is done and dusted, obviously. So I've traded him out to Cameron, and it was almost meant to be because it left me with 1.1K in the bank, $1,100 in the bank. So I was like, you know what? This says to me it's meant to be. I was kind of weighing up between him and Hayden Young was another one from Freo. Thank the Lord I didn't go for Hayden Young. Again, I was worried about his durability, and that was the reason why he was subbed out of the game against Carlton. So really like the upside with Cameron, his elevated ceiling, the fact that he has some really nice matchups coming. So we will enjoy having him. Hopefully he can kick a few more bags and not give away free kicks. And I think he probably should have scored more than 94, in all honesty. I think he kicked, 6 goals or something against Port Adelaide in the end. But yeah, 6 goals won, but only scored a 94. So I was pretty stiff. I think, he only gave away 1 free kick. So I don't know what the issue was there, but maybe he just didn't get enough of the footy, but very strange. But anyway, that was the last trade that we executed. So now we sit back and, again, try and, just lock in the bigger scores when it comes to VCs and the C. Alongside Jezza Cameron in the forward line, we have Jack McRae, 78. He's tapering a bit with his scoring. Still scoring right about the 80 mark. He's tunning up, but just tunning up. So we'd like to see a bit of elevated scoring there from good old Jack. Isaac Rankin, a very nice ceiling score from him with a 129. Came from nowhere, I think. I wasn't really expecting it as Hawthorn. Had a down game against Port Adelaide the previous week with a score of 59, but really nice to see. And again, 44.9% of the competition own him, but was surprised to see there was a few opponents in my Cash League finals that didn't own him, which proved to be a very nice pod. So unsuspected and got me the win and helped me get the win, I should say. Christian Petrarca, a nice ceiling score, a rare ceiling score from him with a 117. Back-to-back tons now, but prior to that, 3 weeks in the 70s, mid to high 80s. So hopefully these tons continue. This bloke here, Caleb Daniel. Now, a lot of people were pissed off with him last week. He punched out his, season low score of 66 second season low score of 66. And there was, 2.4% of the competition actually traded him out. Thankfully, he kept his spot, but people had lost patience, which I thought was really interesting. I know he didn't have the best game against Geelong, but he's still been able to score consistently enough in the 90s, tunning up rarely. But what we saw against the Saints, that was a bounce back. And a 142, a really, really big game from Caleb, the helmeted one, scored that 142 off 32 disposals, 8 marks, and 2 tackles. So may that continue. And Sam Darcy with a 119. Now, had him on the bench with emergency. That's kind of a bit of a strategy I have as well. Played first up. You don't want players to get injured. And a bit of a, fail safe here. If Sam Darcy was to get, a bit of a niggle in game with emergency, what I could do is switch a player from the midfield into the forward line and play someone off the bench in the midfield to cover that vacancy. So if that makes sense. But, Sam Darcy, a really nice score from him, 119, and now plays Melbourne this coming round, finishing off with West Coast and Freo. So hopefully it's a really nice run home for him with some nice scores. So we'll just have to wait and see. But a 119 off the back of a 150 the previous week, starting to recapture those heights, those really nice scores that we brought him in for when we brought him in round 15 against Richmond with a 144. On the bench there we have Campbell Gray, who's virtually out for the season. virtually a loophole DPP type player as a defender forward, and Cooper Simpson was the loophole option here that I used for my VC loophole to lock in Gawn's score. And then the flex as well to round things out, Tom McCarthy, the mid-season rookie Dynamo, smashed out a 123, and his second highest score of the season. Great to see. Really great to see. So help me out there. But with that, that is my team. Let's quickly go through captains, and we might round things out by going through the SuperCoach Edge Cash League results for the first week of finals. So captains. What do we do here? So Bontempelli is probably one I think we're looking at against Melbourne. He's projected for 143, but has scored 182 in his most recent game against the Ds in 2024 round 21. Prior to that, 126 and 107. So just kind of speaks for itself there. Nicky Dacos against Hawthorn plays the first game of the round. Do we put the VC on him? He scored a 116 earlier this season, around 12. Then prior to that, 106 and a 102. There is Maxi Holmes, who plays Essendon. So he's probably one that is a juicy prospect. Scored a 155 back in round 14 against them. Basilenka is another one. So I think there's probably three options here against the Dons that we could aim for. Basilenka 114. And then, of course, the new recruit, Jezza Cameron, with a 116 most recently. So I think you probably couldn't go wrong with either of these options. I'm very tempted to go for Cameron, personally, with the VC because of the fact that you would think his teammates will be feeding him the ball. As we know, Essendon are absolutely decimated by injury across the park. Don't have Ridley there in defence anymore, and Jezza Cameron could really kick 10 goals plus in this game, I think. If we're going to be realistic about things, it's a GMHBA, another big bonus as well. So, Holmes, Jezza, we might just have to wait and see who our opponents have, whether or not they own Holmes, and go from there. And likewise, if they own Jezza Cameron. Ooh, I think those are probably the juiciest VC options. They play, of course, the second game of the round, Geelong and Essendon. St Kilda play Richmond. I don't have any, apart from McRae, any relevant St Kilda players. There is Sinclair as well, of course, but I just don't know. Halfback flankers against Richmond. Yeah, 162 actually. He scored back in round 3 against them, 123 prior to that, and then a 124. So maybe Jack Sinclair's an option there. Grundy plays Brisbane. Now, his most recent encounter, he only scored an 87 back in round 1, but it almost seems as though it's a different Brodie Grundy at this stage of the season compared to, the early rounds of 2025. So what could happen? Really, what could happen? He could smash out another big one. Maxi Gawn, he faces off against Tim English, who I think conceded points, a 130 in his prior game, most recent, then a 162 prior to that, and then a 140 Maxi Gawn. So he has some really nice, favourable history against the Dogs and against Tim English. Do we look at him as an option? Potentially. They play the second last game of the round. And then to round things out, I think, you could go for Whitfield maybe against North Melbourne. 118, most recent, then a 67, then 118 again. You could go for a Sam Darcy against Melbourne. Only scored an 84 in his most recent game. And then prior to that, a 28, which may have been injury affected. Then there's Adelaide against West Coast. You could go for Isaac Rankin, but I just, don't really have the confidence in him. Scored an 87 back in round 11, which was his most recent encounter with West Coast. If you've got a Jordan Dawson or someone, probably speaks for themselves. But those are the big standouts from me. I think, Zach Butters needs to turn things around. Normally he does. He bounces back nicely after a low score. Let me just have a quick look at this. When he scored a 53 earlier this season, he bounced back with a 100. Then when he scored a 94, bounced back with a 124. But his recent games against Freo, who he faces in round 22, 100, 115, and 130. So not the best. But I think for me, I'll be looking closely at obviously the three Geelong players, Holmes, Smith and Jezza against Essendon. You could go for Dacos against Hawthorn, but I think for me personally, I'm going to roll with either Holmesy, Baslenka or Jezza. Outside of that, yeah, probably Maxi Gawn. Sinclair's another one. So there's quite a few options here that we could look at, quite a few. But of course, we will be going through in greater detail the best VC and C options for round 22. So make sure you tune in to our weekly episode of SuperCoach Edge. We will be going, of course, through the I'm the captain now options. But with that, let's go through our SuperCoach Edge Cash League results. And first up for the SuperCoach Edge Contributor Cash League 1, we have, of course, here, the winners. Would you believe? Sloppy Joe, Lane Pipe, the biggest score of all finalists with a 2,840. So good stuff by you, Jonas. You go straight through to the prelim, defeating Bluesman, Grand's team, who scored 2,666. Slim's Garrison, he faced off against... Now, Slim's been talking a big talk, must be said, in our little Discord. If you're not a member of our Discord, by the way, make sure you join it. Hit us up if you don't have the link, but we might even put it up on socials. But usually the link is in the description on YouTube as well if you consume our content in the video format. So check that out in the YouTube description of any video, and you'll find the link there. But Slims has been very, very vocal in the Discord, and you'll probably laugh at this, hearing this, seeing this, but he has been someone that has, been talking a big game and taking the piss, and his banter's been top-notch, by the way. Probably one of the best in terms of the quality of banter that he has been dishing out. He faced off against the father-in-law, my father-in-law, Liam's father-in-law, Pistol Pete, Pete's team, Tankers, and Pete wiped the absolute floor with Slim to the tune of a score of 2,752 to Slim's 2,489. So, Slim, your season has all but finished, mate, unfortunately. But again, love the banter. Keep it going, and love to see what you can do again next season in our leagues, if you are keen, of course, to go around again. But he was up there in terms of being, in the Iron Throne, so to speak, round about the mark. So thank you again, Slims. But that means that Pete faces off against Bluesman, who gets the second chance, and the winner of that game goes through to face the Moves Like Jagger, who ended up defeating. So he finished in third spot. He defeated Still Dream of Heaney, who is, I don't really like Cheese's team, of course, one of our long-time supporters as well, who finished in second spot. So Moves Like Jagger, his side, 2,730, defeated Cheese's team, 2,548. Cheese goes on to face our number one ticket holder in Adam's side, who was victorious against Daniel's team, Export, in 7th spot. And Ad's score was 2,730, defeating Export 2,609. So he goes through victorious into the second week of finals and faces off against Cheesy, which is going to be a very tantalizing matchup there. And the winner of that encounter will go through to the prelim and face off against Sloppy Joe, Lane Pipe, Jonas. He'll be sitting back, having a week off, likewise Moves Like Jagger, and it will be a very, very scintillating run home for the remainder of the finals series. Now, let's have a quick look at the SuperCoach Edge Contributor Cash League 2, and Adam, who in this league as well, he's across both the leagues. That's why he's the number one ticket holder. He does it all. He's an absolute champ and does some absolutely incredible work on a Discord as well, helping Liam and I out in terms of doing previews and reviews, and nice little write-up and stuff as well. So love your work, Ads. And with that, very deserving, finishing top of the table. He faced off against Donny's Good 76, who finished in 4th spot, defeated his team, Mike's team, that is. Adam's side scored 2,730, beating Mike's team 2,474. So a comprehensive victory, goes through to the prelim. So congrats, Ads, there. And Donny's Good faces off against Nards FC, who finished in 5th, who was victorious against Black Flag, John's team, in 8th spot. And it was a very, very narrow victory here by Nards FC. it was only to the tune of 15 points. 2,750 to John's 2,735. So commiserations there, John. You came very, very close. But thank you again for your support, contribution, everything else being in this league, mate. And it's been an incredible part to have you. I think now for a couple of seasons in a row. So thank you for your support, mate. Lazy Sunday, who finished in 6th, defeated Sausage Rolls side in 7th, 2,852, defeating Sausage Roll 2,657. And Lazy Sunday goes through to the second week of finals and faces off against Small Victories, who finished in 3rd spot, but was bested by Zorachilla, Ryan's side, 2,858 to Small Victories, 2,630. So I think that's Empa's team as well, if I'm not mistaken. So Empa goes through with a second chance to face off against Lazy Sunday. So it is in the second week of finals. Isdon is Good 76 facing off against Nards FC, 4th and 5th facing off, and then Lazy Sunday facing off against Small Victories, 6th and 3rd facing off there. And whoever goes through in that encounter faces Adam, and then the victorious team of the Isdon is Good 76 and Nards FC goes through to face Zorachilla. So both of those boys are waiting, kicking their feet up, and enjoying their week off in the meantime. So again, best of luck to those of you still alive in the SuperCoach Edge Contributor Cash League finals across both leagues. And again, thank you so much for your support. With that though, that rounds things out. I don't think there's anything else that we are missing. If we are, let us know. But again, if you have any comments, questions, all that sort of stuff, if you're in need of assistance, please hit us up, of course, on YouTube. If you are watching us, you can hit us up in the comment section down below. Likewise, if you are listening to us on the audio podcast side of things, you can hit us up on socials. Likewise, if you're watching us on YouTube, but hit us up on socials at Twitter, which is at supercoach_edge. You can hit me up at DamoJ88 as well. And just in terms of if you are watching us on YouTube, and even if you're new to YouTube, not YouTube as a platform, but new to us, our content on YouTube, feel free to give us a like, give us a sub, because that's the best way to let us know that you are enjoying our content. And feel free to hit that notification bell as well to be notified of when our content does drop. And if you are tuning into the audio podcast side of things as well, feel free to give us a rating. That would be much appreciated. And hey, you can even give us a review as well on, I think, Spotify and Apple iTunes, I think it's called, what's it called? Apple Pods. On both of those platforms, you can leave a review as well, because we are approaching the end of the 2025 season. Yes, it's very sad, but we do want to improve, and anything that, any feedback, if we're doing well, let us know. If there are things that we could improve upon, let us know as well. And I mean, you don't even need to leave a review in order to do that. You can slide into our DMs, all that sort of stuff, and let us know how we're doing. So really do appreciate all of that feedback, support, everything else. But with that, ladies and gents, that was how things fared in round 21. Hopefully you had an incredible round yourself and was able to progress through to the next week of finals, or at least go through to the prelim and have the week off. That would be very, very handy as well, of SuperCoach finals. Don't forget to tune in to our episode proper for SuperCoach Edge, which will be dropping on around about Wednesday. We do apologize because we weren't able to put out the episode proper per se last round, because just due to time constraints, and I was working a full day of filming for the Melbourne Renegades, which was a 6 a.m. start all the way through until about 4 o'clock, 4:30. It was absolutely wrecked on that Wednesday. So we ended up doing a live. So if you wanted to check that out, feel free to go back. We did a round remix as well for last round. So check that out. It is on YouTube, and we had a few people jumping onto the live chat, and it was a very, very nice laid back episode, that one, and a lot of banter, a lot of back and forth, Q&As, everything else. So that is that. Well, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.